Hello and welcome to the Resort Trades Learning Center. I'm your host, Sharon Scott Wilson. I am publisher of Resort Trades magazine. We're the only monthly print and digital B2B publication in the timeshare industry. So today we're discussing how vacation ownership and timeshare entities can use AI to improve their interactions with current and prospective customers. I don't need to tell anyone what a hot topic AI is. We're all eager to learn more about what's being done and what more we can expect in the future. And here to share their insights are John Arnett and Chris Dickhans from the speech analytics firm Yactraq. So John is Yactraq's Senior VP of Global Sales, and Chris is the company's VP of Sales Americas. So John and Chris, if you all would like to briefly introduce yourselves and what are your roles at Yactraq?
Awesome. So I head up the sales and marketing organization for the company, and I'm based in Toronto, Canada, with our head office actually in Vancouver on the West Coast. And I've been with the company just under 2 years now, kind of in this space though, since it existed. So
you have a good handle on everything we're going to discuss.
I should.
Okay, I'm Chris Dickhans. I'm located in St. Louis, Missouri, so middle of the country, and I am VP of Sales. I'm excited to be on this call today, and I will tell you that I've been in the industry for about 25 years, this exact industry. Machine learning, AI, large language models, those things started coming into my vocabulary around 2012, and you're going to hear how it's transformed since 2012. So looking forward to today.
Well, the official title of this session is How AI Can Dramatically Improve Customer Service While Shattering Sales and Marketing Goals. And that's pretty exciting summation of what many people are looking for to come from AI. So I've asked Chris to answer some questions. There you go. That you could see on your screen. And like to amplify what this means from your point of view, the answers, that is.
Okay, so thank you everyone for joining. And John and I are going to tag team, so I'm going to ask him for input and examples to roll into this so we can make this real. Our job is in the next hour to connect the dots between the name of this title, the questions you see here, and how it impacts your industry. So, and hopefully have additional conversations after today. Okay, so let me talk just for 20 seconds about Yactraq. So we were founded in 2010, and our headquarters is in the beautiful Vancouver, Canada. And we do have a global footprint. So a little bit about what we do. We are AI-powered analytics. It's a platform. So you're going to notice as I go through the tips, the 10 best practice tips, that because we're a platform, they kind of layer on each other. And some of the things we do, and you'll get a feel for those shortly, is we do analyze 100% of recorded calls. We do have assist in real-time calls. We have supervisor heat maps. We do real-time voice transcription in over 80 languages. And we do.
Hey, Chris, even good news on that one is we're about to update that. We're about to release 42 more languages, so we'll be over 120.
Wow. That's fantastic. I love to hear that. And we do have a real-time translation. And so we're going to give you a flavor. Those are all features, and I'm going to talk about the value of features, but the value of connecting that to ROI as we go through these 10 tips. Now, our philosophy is really important to understand because you hear a lot about AI on television, and our philosophy is not to replace people with AI. It is about augmenting every single role in the contact center, as well as adjacent roles of the contact center, and augmenting their roles with AI to help them do a better job at whatever that role is. And we talk a lot about changing the way in which you work, because AI does change our processes. So you'll hear us talk a lot about that, and it's in an effort to increase customer satisfaction, engage our employees better, to reduce costs, and of course, increase our sales. So that's the goal. So benefits. Of course, any technology company that you talk to talks about increasing customer satisfaction, increasing revenue, reducing handle time. I want to spin that on its head just a bit. Yes, we do all those things plus more. But my goal today in talking about the 10 best practices is to really help you understand the feature we're talking about. I talked a little bit about what Yactraq does, and those were features, and that was functionality. And I want to equate that to the capabilities and the benefits, which you can see some of the benefits on the screen here. But at the end of the day, the features and functionality should achieve some kind of ROI, some kind of capability that's going to get you to the ROI. And that's what I hope to do in today's 10 best practices. So again, we do all these things. You can read them for yourself. I'm not going to read them for you, but know that these are unique conversations with each organization, whether you're vacation ownership, resorts, hotels, timeshare entities, whatever it might be. We do this uniquely for each footprint. So moving the slides along, let's talk about the 10 best tips. And I'll talk about them as 10 tips, but I consider them 10 best practices to improve with AI. Now, when we came up with this list, when John and I came up with this list, the reason these 10 surface to the top is because they have the potential, that word, potential, for being the biggest ROI. And why I say potential is because this whole discussion should be about how you transform the way in which your people work, augment your processes, augment the roles of your people. And that's our job to help you understand how that's going to work. And when I talk about potential ROI, what I want to make sure you understand is that if you have a certain process today and you continue to do that same process tomorrow, even after you've adopted AI, then shame on us, shame on you, right? We have to think of the bigger picture about these 10 best practices. They will change the way in which your organization works and the outcomes you receive. So I'll give you an example of what I'd like to convey in these 10 best practices. If you think about number 7, I'll just pull that one out of the hat here. It says automatically summarize calls and save notes to the CRM. So to connect the dots to the previous slide where we talked about benefits, the feature is for us to summarize calls. The functionality is that we're going to summarize those calls, put a timestamp on them, and save them into the CRM. The benefit is we're going to do this automatically for your agents. And the ROI, the capability and the associated ROI is we're going to save all of that time. So as we go through each one of these tips, I want you to think in terms of, she's talking about a feature, what does that really equate to, and how will she help us change our business? I'm going to move on to the next slide, but I first want to ask John, do you have any additional thoughts you want to add there?
Just at an overall thing, one of the things that I found interesting talking to clients at trade shows and things is, yes, the ROI is the easy one that we always talk about, but it's, you actually get increased employee satisfaction on the flip side of things. A lot of those mundane tasks, like if you ask any agent, do you like writing notes after your calls? No, they hate it. It's awful. They don't want to do it. And in most of these tips kind of fall into the realm is where, again, when we're augmenting people's roles with AI, we're not replacing them. We're taking away the stuff they hate doing, the mundane stuff that's not personable and something unique to a human. So again, that's it helps ROI for the company, but also satisfaction for the employees.
Thank you, John. So one of the things that I shared a moment ago was that this is a platform. And so when I talk about these tips, and John will chime in, know that you can do 4 things, one thing 4 different ways, and they're meant to work together. So as I talk about these tips, it might be unclear how one tip is different than another. I'm going to try to connect the dots on those, but know that it all works together in the same platform. So tip number 1 and tip number 2 share a lot of likeness. And so let's start into tip number 1, which is a best practice. So it's about achieving 100% script compliance on calls. Not everybody has script compliance needs, but for the most part, every organization has one or two small needs that we need to address. And script compliance, if we looked at the average call center today and we asked them how compliant they are, and if they were audited, what they think their score would be. And they're going to say about 60%. And by the way, the industry average is going to say about 60%. And I will tell you that in the contact centers that I work in, I would say that's a high guess. And there's a reason why I feel like it's a high guess. We look at 2 to 3% of the volume of calls we take, and we wrap it around a process we call quality assurance and a dispute process. And we have this whole process around transactional QA. And transactional QA is you did this, you didn't do this, you did this, you didn't do this. And the only reason we fall into that bucket in the vacation ownership, resorts, hotels, timeshare entities, the whole reason we fall into that kind of transactional quality, which means we don't really see 100% script compliance. The whole reason we fall there is because they lack the tools to do anything different. And if we really were wanting to look at 100% script compliance in a world that we live in today, it would cost so much to add the headcount to do that. Well, imagine a world where the agents do have visibility in real time to script compliance and whether they've adhered to that script compliance. And if they haven't, real-time alerts that say you need to restate the script before the end of the call so that we're compliant. Imagine that world where you can achieve that 100% script compliance and we ensure that the call doesn't move forward until that script compliance is there. John, I'll ask you for comments.
Yeah, no, that captures it. The only thing that I would add is just, we've had a growing number of clients recently, over the last, let's say 12 months, that are just more worried about legal issues or have been facing legal issues where they're getting sued for various non-compliant things. And this is becoming a necessity because, one fine and you're going to pay for this platform for 10 years, it's that kind of disparity. So really important stuff to have compliance.
Yep. That is for sure. Okay, let's go ahead and move on. Like I said, tip number 1 and tip number 2, I like to talk to them together because tip number 1, which is 100% compliance scoring, is we analyze all the calls, which is why we're able to do the compliance. Well, because we analyze 100% of the calls, the interactions, we now can automate quality scoring. So we can look at 100% of all the interactions that are coming in. Again, when I talk about quality, I'm speaking about the overall quality of service to every one of your members, every one of your customers. I'm not talking about quality assurance teams any longer. I'm talking about looking at the whole of all the data that's coming into your contact center, whether it's your voice of your customer or it's your agents talking or anything that they're doing in your contact center. It's about looking at that full view and scoring 100% of those interactions. So imagine a world where AI can automatically understand 100% of those interactions. You can coach to 100% of those interactions. Think about how happy your employees will be. And we can coach to the severity or the challenges that they have across all of their calls. We've wrapped a whole process in the last 15, 20 years, the dispute process around this transactional quality because it's 2 or 3% of what's going on in your organization. So we're changing that game. We're scoring 100% of those calls. And we're coaching to 100% of those calls to really make a difference in your organization. And John, I'll go ahead and let you comment on that tip.
The only thing I'll add is, again, on the employee satisfaction thing, the last show that we were at, I asked a director of quality that was there. I said, she was a quality manager rather. And she said, I said, when you listen to calls, how often do you listen to it and nothing happens and there's no action for you to take? And she said, all the time. She's sitting there and she'll listen to a call for 6 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever. And she's like, okay, that was a waste of time. And I said, like, how frustrating is that? And so, with being able to have the AI review the call and only flag the ones that actually have some kind of an action or need coaching, whatever, it just, again, makes people have a useful job that they like. And again, you're going to coach people up so much faster when you're actually seeing what's happening and not missing 97% of what's happening.
Exactly. Okay, tip number 3, best practice number 3 is about leveraging predictive scoring models that work with sales. It works with sales and it works with customer service, slightly different ways. In sales, we're looking at the propensity to buy. In customer service, we're looking at the loyalty of our customer. In this case, I'm going to stick to sales because I think it's important to the conversation that Sharon and I agreed to respond to for this industry. And it is about leveraging that predictive scoring model so that we understand what the propensity to buy is for that caller, for that person that's calling in. So imagine a world where we get an alert as an agent at the beginning of an interaction that gives us a score. And it's based on previous calls. It's based on the voice tone. It might be based on customer sentiment, words spoken. It's all of that to tell us what is the propensity of this customer to buy on this call. And imagine a world where you might have a different process wrapped around, if I get a 20% score, this person's called in one other time and they were irate, it might be a much less score than if it's an 80% score. So you might have somebody that you want to take those calls specific to the propensity of a much higher number of that caller to purchase in that call. I think that adding the predictive models and the real-time alerts around these predictive models helps guide the tips that'll come in. It'll help guide what they should be saying on that unique call, that unique sales call.
Yeah, and
John.
what I like about this, and well, I guess I should say what our customers like most about this is it's a real motivator for sellers as well, because the system is telling a seller kind of 10 seconds into a call, what's the likelihood the lead's going to close? If they see 90%, you want to hear that person's voice light up, their energy goes up, everything, and then it's kind of like a self-perpetuating process where they're going to sell even better than they normally would. So we've seen definitely huge results from this. You can even use the same feature to generate like a top lead list. So I call them like the Glengarry leads for anyone that gets that reference. And it's going to, at the beginning of the day, if you want, you can run it through and say, show me all my top buyers from yesterday that are, for a multi-sale process. And guess what? I'm going to take those 100 leads and I'm going to call them right away. So lots of use cases for this. And shockingly, it's almost not used in the industry at all, but has huge potential.
Yeah.
Before we leave this topic altogether, I just wanted to interject that while in timeshare, of course, you don't make sales over the phone, when you're generating tours to visit the resort, this is completely applicable.
Yep. Yeah. And we integrate our technology with other, on-site sort of recording devices like Eagle Eye, for example, where it doesn't have to be a phone call. It's a video process, in person. So we're already integrated with really nice tools like that so that it works in this exact selling environment.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so moving on to tip number 4, allow supervisors to help hundreds of agents at once. So this is a game changer here. So gone are the days of the 1-to-1 supervisor to agent ratio. It's a very reactive model. It's old school, right? It's now easy to deploy a one-to-many. And what I mean by that is one supervisor to many agents. It's really more of a proactive assistance model. And you're kind of seeing that up on the screen here. So in this case, it's a one supervisor to 53 ongoing calls taking place. But as you can see, if you looked at the whole list, you can see really only 2 need assistance. So this is real-time heat maps for a supervisor. And what it simply does is it bubbles up. Because we look at 100% of the interactions, and because AI understands intent, and because we categorize key problem areas, key challenge areas, because we understand the business, we can now build heat maps to say, alert us when there's multiples of things where we can go into the agent's desktop, look at the categories, look at the customer sentiment, look at the issues they're having, and offer real-time agent assist in tips or tricks, assistance on the fly. So we can do that one-to-many versus a world in which a supervisor gets up and walks over to the agent's desk, or the agent walks to the supervisor's desk, or they call them on the phone and say, hey, I have a customer or a member on the phone that is upset about whatever, right? This is real-time supervisor assisting agents, and it bubbles up based on the way we put the platform together.
Yeah, and this can work even in kind of a local environment. Again, if you were in a room with somebody, but you've got any kind of recording device or camera, whatever, the same thing can work where you're literally notifying management of issues. And this is not just issues with words being spoken. It's the voice tone of the customer, all their emotions, sentiment analysis, all that stuff's in here. And you also don't have to be glued to your screen waiting for this. We have a feature where if manager, whoever it is, sets a threshold and they say every time something gets over a 10, so it's a red, I want to know. They can get a text or a WhatsApp message right to their phone the second that it happens, click a button and see on right in their face what's happened and why. So it makes it super easy, again, to pretty much manage your whole business with less people, or manage your business much better with the same amount of people.
Yeah, and I think that this is a great time to just chime in and say, the world is changing dramatically, right? AI is changing everything we're doing, and we're augmenting roles, and things are changing in real time. And there's a cost for organizations to not pay attention to this, right? There's a cost to do nothing. And so these are just some of the ideas. We're only on tip number 4. We're going to hit tip number 5 in a second. But I want you to think in terms of what is the cost to our organization to sit back and say, we're going to wait. And I can tell you there's a significant cost. We are now on tip number 5. And tip number 5 is about proactively providing service agents. So these might be something like a welcome kit discussion or a welcome call, where the agents need tips to respond quickly. So think in terms of welcome call comes in, and there's resort packages, and there's gifts and number of days and timeshare components that would be real life tips that are delivered based on the timeshare package that was purchased, right? So these tips are proactively provided to the service agent. So I'm going to give you an example. This isn't in this industry, but it is a relevant situation. So recently I called an airline to talk about my dog being able to travel with me. Now, I knew that I could probably go search on the website and dig around and find my answers, but I felt like it would be iterative and that I would have to ask a question. And then once I heard the response, I could ask my next question. And I was calling into the EP desk and figuring I could get the responses quicker. Well, I couldn't. It was over 12 minutes. It was a lot of typing. And I knew the agent was trying to help me. It wasn't that she didn't want to help me. She just didn't know the answers. And after 12 minutes, 2 long holds, and a lot of typing into her keyboard, she was able to respond to me. And she told me that she found the answers on their website. So imagine a world where those tips, because AI understands intent, again, I'm going to say that AI understands intent. It knew that the discussion was my dog traveling with me. Wouldn't it have been great if immediately on that agent's desktop were the tips, travel tips for traveling with the dog?
Yeah, so and this addresses actually Jeffrey's question. So perfect timing for that, because he asked how, what are some of the ways that AI benefits timeshares customers directly? And, this is one of the ways. There's a few more, but this is one of the ways because, to Chris's point, anytime somebody's calling in and has a question, instead of all that research time and sitting there with the dead air, but you hear the typing keyboard, it's no, they can just give you the answer because the AI can pull it back in 2 seconds. And not only that, but one thing I've noticed with calling other call centers, I always have issues with my cell phone, everything like that, is some of the most seasoned agents actually give you the worst answers because it's something they learned 5 years ago. That's not even the policy anymore, right? So now with the AI, it's constantly going to surface and put that little 1-sentence tip on the screen of the agent. They can click to see more. But if a policy's changed, guess what? Now they've got the updated one instead of, I learned this 5 years ago, but it's actually wrong. So there's lots of benefits to this for the customer, mainly time, but accurate information too.
Yeah, and I think also things change quickly, right? So adding these tips is a very simple process for us at Yactraq. And so you think of like timeshare packages or resort packages or hotel packages, vacation ownership package, any of those things, right? They all are unique in their own way. They might come with this, these 3 special gifts or this special number of days or these unique, whatever it is. And it gets very confusing and they have to make sure that they go through all those in some of the interactions they have. So think of a world where since AI understands intent, we can build those tips to come right at the agent, depending on the type of call that is, type of interaction that is. I hope that answered the question. Okay. Tip number 6, tip number 6, best practice, lower handle times and increase customer experience with instant product knowledge. So this is about proactively providing the sales agents tips that they need to respond and improve sales. And John, I know you have a huge customer that I'm going to have you talk about in a second. Very complex sale, very large sales. But I first want to preface all of this with, this sounds like it's a lot of things going on to make this stuff work. But we typically encourage our customers to start off with their frequently asked question lists that they give their new agents. And then we continue to add to that. But it can be as robust as integrating to their learning management system or their website. But John, I'll have you just very quickly talk about one of your organizations, and then I'll chime in here.
Yeah, and the example here is actually from a real customer of ours who's a very large appliance and electronics retailer in the US. And they use this to literally just recommend products. So when a customer calls in, you can see in this case, it's clearly not this industry, but you can see how it works. The person's saying that they have a broken fridge, what do they have on sale? They want stainless steel. Right. So out of that, the system recognizes all the different intents. And instead of those 10 minutes, 12 minutes, whatever, clicking through their corporate website to try and find products that match, it just puts it on the screen for them. And it'll give them 1, 2, 5 tips and say, here's the Maytag, here's the Bosch, whatever. And they can just read it to the customer and, get that process done. Your sales go up when you can answer things quickly. You're not frustrating your customers also. And, for them, it's giving, at least 20% reduction in call times, higher sales, things like that, and just better customer satisfaction in general. But you can see this could be used across anything for selling. And when people have questions on packages, or even if they mention a budget or whatever, any of those things, the system can be integrated to pull back those answers instantly for sellers and agents. So, yeah, just sort of huge time savings and ease of use across the board.
And not so much in the product or sales arena, but let's just say in the timeshare industry. Let's say that we're talking about increasing customer experience, improving customer experience is rather what I'd say. And we start hearing deceptive business practices or some Better Business Bureau. Think of whatever you want to think of here. But think of it bringing back the product knowledge about what the person bought and the things that were spoken to that person when they made that purchase. So it's bigger and broader than the scenario that John gave you. Although John gave you a great one, you can think of it in terms of anything that can improve your CX or clarify things to your customers in real time.
The last thing I'll add to this one, Chris, too, is it's almost like an auto training tool. That's not initially how we kind of talked about this, but when you think about it, an agent that is kind of junior, it's going to be giving them answers and sort of what to say next. So it's like training them in real time on the job. But obviously in the real world, a trainer can only do one person at a time. This is every agent's got their own little kind of AI assistant trainer, right? So it just speeds up people's ramp time and ability to do their jobs better.
Perfect. Thank you for that additional side note. Okay, I moved on to tip number 7, and we covered this when I was talking about the 10 top best practices, and I talked a little bit about tip number 7. And so this is about automatically summarizing calls, placing a timestamp on that summary, and saving those notes into your system of record. So I want you to think about your agents in your contact center today and the amount of time that they take to summarize an interaction, place those notes into your system of record. And oh, by the way, there's another variable here, and that's the variation of the way I take notes. And this is a true story. The way I take notes, John, is that vastly different than the way you take notes?
Yeah. Mine are like cocktail napkin, 3 words, and Chris's are War and Peace.
Yes, that is a true statement. But so you take that variation away, and because AI understands intent, and because we're transcribing 100% of that interaction, AI can now summarize that in bulleted fashion, put timestamps of where that summary exists, and then place that into the CRM or the system of record. And so, I talked about taking a feature, understanding the functionality, understanding the benefits to your organization, and what that capability will mean as far as it relates to ROI. That's the perfect scenario as we understand how this will relate to your business. But let's take, for example, this unique situation, and I'm an agent, and I take, let's say, 26 15-minute calls in a day, 26 of them, 15 minutes. Each of those 15-minute calls is going to take me at least 2 or 3 minutes. Now, if you're John, it might take 1.5 minutes. It's me, it might take 2.5 minutes, but somewhere between, 2 to 3 minutes on a 15-minute call. That's 52 minutes a day. That's at least 5 hours a week. That's 260 hours a year times however many agents you have. If you have 150 agents, I'm telling you, if you just in your mind's eye said, my agent costs today, my agent costs across the year, as I do my budgeting, is X. Take 12 to 15% of that. When you get a feature and a functionality and the associated ROI, you can subtract that right out of there. Now, there's another conversation to be had around, are you going to grow your organization without adding the extra MSRs or agents? That's one way. Or are you going to give them something different to do? Or are you going to, as you attrite, not replace agents so that you're running a little bit leaner and meaner as you automate some of these things? Now, there's no wrong answer to this, but those are the things you have to think about when you're saving this amount of time across every interaction.
Yeah. Yeah. The simple way I always tell people at this in 10 seconds is that, what if every person working for you could work an extra hour a day for free? Would you like that? Like that's basically what it is. And then the other thing that's a huge one, not just the time savings for the agents and not having them do these annoying notes that they don't want to do, but it's the promises. When there's promised action items, I've been on millions of different calls with different companies. People make all these promises of what they're going to do next. And do they actually do them all? No. Maybe it's because they forgot some of them, right? Even on one call, you might have said you're going to do 3 things and you don't. The summary accurately will say your action items promised here, right? So you know exactly what you need to do to follow up and you haven't forgotten.
Absolutely. Thank you for catching that. That is an important piece I missed. Okay, tip number 8. Tip number 8 is all about automating customer trends across all the interactions. So we all know that contact centers have a wealth of information. There's so much data, and it makes me crazy when I walk into a contact center and you hear somebody say, I need a report, and they're asking for something that they know is going to give them an end result of X, and they're looking at this much data. Contact centers have so much more data, and the point of this particular tip is that when we know what we want to look for, we go look for that, but there's so much more information. So in the case of we build categories and we know what we're looking for and we know what products our people are searching for, and all of that is what we know, and that's great. There are things we don't know, and that happens all the time. And I'll give you a perfect scenario of something that happened to me, and it could have been really embarrassing, but it was not. So I had a customer, it was the VP of operations and the director of a contact center, and they wanted to see what AI could do. And they asked me to take and do kind of a proof of concept, if you will, to take this bulk of calls and use AI and tell them what was going on that they may not know. So my goal was to go find like a golden nugget. And of course, if you look at the bottom of the left part of the screen here, it says AI can uncover customer trends 34,000 times faster than a human. 34,000 times faster than a human. Even if you don't believe that, would you believe 10%? That's still so much faster. Now, I personally believe it's 34,000 times faster. I work in the industry. I know how to use the platform. But in this instance, I kind of did a mini POC with calls that were 3 months prior. And I showed up to do the readout to say, okay, here's what we found with AI. And I didn't know their business. They know their business better than I, but I know how to use the platform. And I stood up in front of the group to do the presentation, and the director of the contact center, Chris, we already knew that. And I said, oh, when did you find that out? How did you find that out? And they said, well, we found out about 2 days ago, and we did a little huddle in the middle of the contact center in the morning hours, and the agent said this is kind of bubbling up and that we need to pay attention. And I said, okay, great. That's fantastic. However, I knew within an hour, and my information was 3 months old. So how much did it cost you from that 3-month time period till today for that issue to exist? So the point in telling you that is you could get something that says pet waste station, or federal lawsuit, or you violated my, or deceptive business, or bed bugs, and whatever it is, right? It could bubble up and you're going to say, oh my God, I need to pay attention. We're not looking at this as a category, but it's bubbling up enough to know that AI is saying, pay attention to me. And that's when you pay attention. So there is an example that I'd like to use, and this is with a travel company. So not resort or hotels, but this is travel. And just prior to COVID really being something everybody was talking about, this is about this company recognizing a trend and building a new revenue stream from it. So the trend statement was COVID insurance. Well, there was no such thing as COVID insurance. That wasn't even a thing, but it became a thing. So the travel company listened to what was bubbling up about the COVID insurance and realized that there was a high demand by their travel customers that they wanted to be protected somehow. They were trying to build vacations, and they were trying to, for their family, or trying to do business trips. And they wanted some assurance that if somebody in the family got sick, or if they got sick, that they weren't going to lose all that money. So this travel company paid attention. They built a new a new revenue stream from it that was called, guess what? COVID insurance. So it didn't exist. They made it exist, and it was something that was important to how they furthered their business. And John, I'll ask you for questions here.
No, No, this is actually addressing also part of Jeffrey's question, because this one's a direct benefit to customers, because companies are going to early on identify things customers want to change around the service, the products, like the bed sheets, whatever it is. It's going to be an early notification. And again, normally, if you're listening to 3% of your calls, you maybe have somebody in your customer service team who's submitting suggestions or tickets, but probably not. And if they do, it's not, you can't really get an idea how big of an issue is this, how frequent is it. And with a system like this, it's going to identify really quickly, sort of instantly, what customers want, and you can make those changes and make your customers happier. So it's just, again, some of this stuff you would find out probably eventually, but oftentimes when it's too late. That company that Chris is mentioning with the travel, they were saying that they were losing out a lot of bookings, as everybody was back then, because people were worried about booking and not having insurance in case something happened later. So had they waited, 6-9 months to add that kind of product, they would have lost 6 or 9 months of those sales. But by adding it right away, before literally anybody knew what the term was, or most people knew what the term was, they were able to put that in and be kind of the first to market on having that, and really kind of, I wouldn't say boost their sales, because they were mostly just trying to save them and recover, but it really did put them ahead of their competition. So again, just being able to identify things way faster and earlier makes a huge business impact across the board.
Yep. Okay, so this is kind of carrying on into tip number 8, and I'm going to show you just a very quick video to give you an impact of what we're talking about here. But this is about Clara AI, and we call it Ask Anything. And I love it because I'm so used to people knowing the end result of what they want. They go ask for a report, and they get the answer to that report, and they hand it off, and nobody asks questions, and they don't think outside of the data that they know exists in their contact center that they're used to touching. And it's so much bigger than that. So I'm going to share a video, but I want to talk a little bit about what you're seeing here. So we rolled out Clara AI. Well, actually, John rolled out Clara AI in Europe about, 9 weeks ago. Huge rollout, and got tons of attention. And then I rolled it out a few weeks after that in Americas, and huge attention to it. And I want to explain why there's so much attention. So, you can tell me in the chat if you've ever used ChatGPT, pardon the pun there. If you've ever used ChatGPT, I do use it, and I love it when I love it. I hate it when I hate it. And so ChatGPT is great at giving me the right answers sometimes, but it's horrible at giving me hallucinations, meaning it's giving me bad answers. They're not going to work for me. And it's because it's trying to process trillions and trillions and trillions of articles on Google to come up with the response that Chris just asked to get a response to. And so when it's good, it's good. And when it's bad, it's really bad. So the difference between a ChatGPT, and I didn't look to see who responded to who's used it before, but the difference would be, imagine a world in which you can use something like ChatGPT, but it's focused and trained only on the contact center. So on your contact center, it understands your data, it understands your people, it understands your categories, it understands your departments, it understands all those piece parts, so that when you ask a question and you can ask it anything, it can come back with the responses in context to what you've asked.
Yactraq has harnessed the latest advancements in ChatGPT technology, allowing you to instantly mine your vast customer data for incredible insights and correlations that a human may never uncover. Ask Clara AI in plain language to tell you anything. What is the root cause of agent underperformance? What are the key talk tracks that lead to closing sales? The system instantly generates answers and solutions while even visualizing the key points. Truly take your contact center to the next level with Clara AI.
Just to give you guys an idea, so basically, like Chris said, built on ChatGPT. We also have a version that we use in Europe that's built on a different engine, but the ChatGPT technology is working great here. And what it can do is, because it's correlating so many data points in a call environment or a video environment or anything where it's a recorded environment in real time, even it's correlating things like speed or speech cadence, the emotional tone of a customer or a seller, all those things with the words they're using, then with did a sale happen, all that kind of stuff, and correlating all to let you ask any kind of questions to see how to improve your team. So the example that I'll give you is you could go in and say, hey, Clara, tell me who is my best seller? And it says, oh, Joe Smith, he's your best seller. Okay, why? Well, Joe is closing 26% more often than the average person on his team. Okay, that's great, but why? Well, in 74% of the times Joe closes, he's using such and such positive tone, he's speaking at a fast pace, and he's mentioning these specific benefits of your product to the customers. And whenever he says this, the customer in turn, their attitude and emotion increases. So you should take these exact phrases and benefits and train your whole team that these are the key ones you should be using, right? So that's just one example of what it can do. But you can use it on the flip side for customer service, right? What's causing the most issues with my customers? Oh, well, it's this. Okay, why? And it's one of those things where you can keep digging down. Why? It's, kind of like a child asking questions, but it will answer you sort of forever and give you these answers that may be impossible almost to find just doing manual data mining, because an analyst could try 5,000 ways to try and correlate these things and may never notice the actual causation.
I think the other thing too is, and you kind of mentioned it here, but understanding why are customers complaining about a purchase, a timeshare purchase? Why are they complaining about X resort, whatever it might be, right? These things will come up and you can ask and it will bubble those up for you. So, we'll move on to tip number 9 here, and we have about 10 minutes left, and I haven't gotten any questions. Tip number 9, I've just kind of covered already. It's around the difference between analyzing 100% of the calls and understanding how you can coach to 100% of those calls versus anecdotal Q&A, transactional Q&A, and then coaching to just those one-offs that you're doing quality around. It's around bringing all this together, also using Clara AI. This is how it's starting to layer on. So you're starting to see some trends. We analyze 100% of the calls. We coach on 100% of the calls. We can ask Clara AI to respond to questions on why things need coaching, and all that comes together. So tip number 9 is pretty robust. Although we have it under coaching, it makes things like your rebuttal process or your dispute process go away, right? Because you have exact information. It's much bigger and broader than I've explained here.
In a way, it's similar to the e-discovery piece you showed before, but in that you can ask it anything and it's going to give you these usable results because it is focused AI. That's the term that we've been using recently is, again, ChatGPT, it goes wild. This is focused AI, can only answer questions about your business.
Okay, so that's a big one, right? We're only spending a few seconds on this slide, but it's a big one.
Slide 2, this tip is one that I actually already talked about in the previous one because this is the exact thing about determining where your top sellers are. So apologies, everyone, for kind of reversing the order when the video didn't work. But anyway,
a perfect example, though, John, I will tell you here, you mentioned that you were trying to find the best agent that could sell and what was the customer's sentiment, and it was increased sentiment. It was it was a happy agent. But you could equally ask that same question and it say that the agent is neutral. The member service rep was neutral, but they had a high, you don't know what you're going to get, right? You absolutely don't know, but the data tells the story. The data is the truth. So it allows you to see all the data and not make judgment calls.
And the beauty really about the AI version of this, and this came from, this is one of the largest call centers in the world. So they've got hundreds of thousands of people taking phone calls all day. And they have a giant data analytics team, right? So they have people that do this all day long for their jobs. And they said, is this to replace my people? Not at all. This is a tool to make those people way better at what they do and faster. And I said, so right now, if you had a weird thought, does this emotion type correlate to somebody buying something more? And how would you look at that? And they said, well, we would have an analyst assign maybe 1 or 2 weeks they would spend going through all the data and Power BI, Tableau, whatever they use, and they might come up with an answer. And I said, okay, and what if they didn't? He's like, well, that was a waste of 2 weeks. I said, okay, what if they could test that theory in 10 seconds? And that's literally what it does. So, those teams are still great because you want that human asking the questions, but the amount of results you can get for it are just insane.
Just mention that this past week we got the gold medal, ranked #1 for best tech innovation. Of course, Gartner has given us the coolest AI vendor award. So all that's really nice. We'd love to share what we do in more detail. Want to thank you for letting us get through the 10 best practice tips and kind of aligning that to what we do and what we deliver in your industry.
I want to make sure that you understand Resort Trades is the only surviving monthly publication. We're both in print and digital that go to every resort executive essentially out there. And it's all free. So I encourage you to go to resorttrades.com and subscribe. We also have a weekly e-newsletter. And if you want to be engaged with the industry and stay current, why not? It's all free. So
from Ryan on, are there issues, latency, delay, transaction times for AI lookup and response when connecting to cloud-based CCaaS environments? So generally the answer is no. Our platform, for example, can be hosted anywhere. So it could be on premise, even if that's how somebody has their own servers, or it can be, an Oracle, AWS, Azure, it doesn't matter. And the real world latency on any of that lookup stuff is typically under 500 milliseconds. And under 50 in many, many cases. So we don't see any issue with lag there. The beauty about the AI piece is now most of it's written to run on GPU. So if there's any slowdown on the processing side, not the connection side, but the processing side, we just ramp up what's being used. So, literally add some GPUs or add some more CPUs and all of a sudden it runs faster. But again, short version is real world, under half a second delay. Will AI agents eventually answer customer calls directly, thereby reducing wait times for owners seeking assistance? So that's an interesting question. We have toyed with, and we've done sort of development on the AI agents talking to customers, whether it's a chat bot that's talking directly to the customer or whether it's a voice bot where you're calling in and having a conversation with it. The technology is getting way better. There's a lot of cool stuff you can do, but we don't think it's quite there yet, which is why our company we don't even sell customer-facing bots, because personally, I've used them for every number of industry, and I'm frustrated 99% of the time with them. So I think still today it kind of degrades a brand, and that's why we're saying the person still needs to be in the way. And again, it could be a human chat agent or a human voice agent or an in-person human, and we're just going to help them be faster and better and have all these answers. It's probably more like the Star Trek example, where they're constantly asking computer, can you tell me blah, blah, blah? And it gives them the instant answer, and then they can work with whatever that is. So it's doing that sort of thing to help the customers.
Your experiences with the reliability of automated notes and CRM function. I'm not sure what reliability.
Oh, reliability. Oh, probably accuracy is what. So that question. I don't know if I have an exact number. I would say it's above the 90% range. The interesting part about the summarization is you can actually tweak it depending on your needs. So let's say it's too verbose. You can, there's actually the ability to change it to do a more broad summary of things, but you can also go the other way. So if you're saying it's missing details and I want a longer summary that's definitely not going to miss anything, you can do that as well. So it's kind of finding a balance. It's something we do with our customers is customize that for each one. Because some people say, you know what, I want a 5-minute phone call summarized in 1 paragraph. Fine, we can do that. Or they say, I want to make sure nothing's missed. So, okay, your 5-minute call that's only like a 4-page transcript, it may be a 2-page summary if that's how crazy you want to get, but it's all tweakable. So that's something that on a case-by-case basis, we work with somebody on to make sure it works how they want. Yeah, besides listening and adding notes and saving notes, can AI put notes into effect, such as creating reservations or updating reservation, et cetera? So the short answer is yes. That also always is a custom kind of thing for that, because it's going to depend on what systems it has to integrate with. But absolutely. So we've done things in the past with like Salesforce, for example. So if somebody's using Salesforce as their CRM, which I know is not necessarily the most common one in the resort and timeshare industry, but if they're using something like that, the summary section, if there's an action item like I've agreed to have a follow-up call on X date at X time, it can actually auto-create the appointment in Salesforce for me as an agent. So depending on what CRM system or what other reservation system you're using, the short answer is yes. It just requires a little customization, but that's something that's for the developers to have fun building.
If I could also interject, we have Resort Trades has a couple of great software companies that are dedicated specifically to timeshare. And I would just encourage anyone interested to check with, or maybe you guys, I guess is who I'm talking to check with SPI and Timeshareware and see if you can work out a connection with them.
Absolutely. Thank you for your time. We appreciate it. And I'll let you end it, Sharon.
Well, thank you very much. And I really appreciate it, John and Chris. Thank you for the great effort to put together a great presentation. And I think you probably got a lot of people thinking. I would like to advise our viewers when they do see the YouTube version to please subscribe to youtube.com/resort trades and help us to keep this information in circulation to others in the industry. And so with that, I wish you all well and appreciate your participation very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.